So today's topic is white matter of cerebrum. We know each cerebral hemisphere, it consists of outer layer of gray matter and inner layer of white matter. There is a collection of masses of gray matter in the white matter. These are called basal ganglia. And there is a cavity inside it, inside this cerebrum. This is called lateral ventricle. So each cerebral hemisphere consists of outer layer of gray matter, inner layer of white matter. In the white matter, there are some masses of gray matter located in the central core of the cerebrum. These are called basal ganglia. And in each hemisphere, there is a lateral ventricle. So here we can see white matter of this cerebrum. It consists of three types of fiber. White matter is made up of the axons of these fibers. So it consists of three types of fiber: association fiber, commissural fibers, and projection fibers. Association fibers, they connect the different gyri or adjacent gyri in the same hemisphere. They may be short or they may be long. Long association fibers, they connect the distant gyri, and the short association fiber, they connect the adjacent gyri, but in the same cerebral hemisphere. Commissural fibers, they connect the identical areas of the both cerebral hemisphere. And third is the projection type of fibers. They connect the cortex with the subcortical areas. They connect with this cortex with the thalamus or brainstem or the spinal cord. So projection type of fibers, they connect the cerebrum with the subcortical areas. Here you will get the descending and ascending type of fibers, which forms the tracts. So basically, white matter of cerebral hemisphere consists of, it is made up of fibers, made up of three fibers: association, commissural, and projection fibers. First, we study detail about the association fibers. Association fibers, we have seen, they connect the different region in the same cerebral hemisphere. They may connect the distant gyri or they may connect the adjacent gyri, but in the same cerebral hemisphere. So short association fiber, they connect the adjacent gyri in the same hemisphere, and long association fibers, they connect the distant gyri in the same hemisphere. So example of this association fibers are superior longitudinal fasciculus. It is an example of long association fibers. It connects the frontal. Here we can see this is the superior longitudinal fasciculus. It connects the frontal, occipital, and temporal lobe each other. Gyri of this lobe, they are connected by this superior longitudinal fasciculus. It is one of the example of long association fiber. Then another example is arcuate fibers. Arcuate fibers, they connect the frontal lobe, gyri in the frontal lobe with the temporal lobe. Basically connect the Broca's area with the Wernicke's speech area. So it is important for the language function. Here we can see, so Broca's area and this is Wernicke's area, which are connected by this arcuate fasciculus. Now, inferior longitudinal fasciculus, it is also example of long association fiber, and it connects the occipital lobe, gyri in the occipital lobe with the temporal lobe. Now, occipital lobe, basically it contains visual areas, so it contributed in the visual recognition. It connects the visual area with the temporal lobe. It has a role in visual recognition. Then uncinate fasciculus, this is inferior longitudinal fasciculus. This is superior longitudinal fasciculus, and this is the uncinate fasciculus. This uncinate fasciculus is U-shaped and it curves around the stem of the lateral sulcus. Here is the lateral sulcus. It curves around the stem of lateral sulcus. Here it's called uncinate fasciculus, and it connects the anterior and inferior parts of the frontal lobe with the temporal. So it is related to the limbic system. It connects the parts of the limbic system. Now cingulum. This is cingulum. It begins in the paraterminal gyrus and it runs in the later on it runs in the cingulate gyrus. We have seen this is cingulate gyrus, and then it turns in the inferiorly. It runs into the parahippocampal gyrus, and it connects the parts of the limbic system. It is a part of limbic system and connect the different parts of the limbic system, and it finally terminates in the uncus. Uncus, part of the temporal lobe. So cingulum, it is also example of long association fiber. It is going to connect the parts of limbic system. So this is a diagram showing the superior longitudinal fasciculus, this one, and below it you can see this is a arcuate fasciculus. This is uncinate fasciculus, which is winding around the stem of lateral sulcus. Here, U-shaped manner, this is uncinate fasciculus. Okay. Now, next type of fiber is commissural fibers. Commissural fibers, they basically connect the same identical areas of the two cerebral hemisphere. Identical areas of the two cerebral hemispheres, these are connected by commissural type of fibers. Example of commissural type of fibers are corpus callosum, anterior commissure, posterior commissure, habenular commissure, and hippocampal commissure. Apart from this corpus callosum, we are going to study in detail about this. Sometimes there is also short note on this, so it is important as per your exam purpose. Corpus callosum, it is an example of commissural type of fiber. It is largest commissure of the brain. It connects the homologous or identical areas of the two cerebral hemisphere. It is 10 centimeter in length. It contains almost 300 million fibers, and it shows four parts: rostrum, genu, this is rostrum, then genu, then trunk, or also called as a body, and this thickest portion behind you can see this is splenium. So corpus callosum, it is made up of these four parts: rostrum, genu, trunk, and splenium. So anterior end of this corpus callosum, this is anterior end. So it lies 4 centimeter behind the frontal pole. Lies 4 centimeter behind the frontal pole. And posterior end, this is posterior end, which is formed by the splenium. So posterior end, it lies 6 centimeter in front of the occipital lobe. So this anterior end of the corpus callosum, it lies 4 centimeter behind the frontal pole, and posterior end lies 6 centimeter in front of the occipital pole. This corpus callosum, it lies in the median longitudinal fissure of the cerebrum. Now, here we can see it lies in the floor of median longitudinal fissure. Its inferior surface is concave, and it is attached to the fornix by septum pellucidum. Septum pellucidum, So inferior surface is attached to the fornix by septum pellucidum, and its convex superior surface is covered by the thin layer of indusium gracium. So this inferior surface of the corpus callosum is attached to fornix by the septum pellucidum, and superior surface, it is covered by the thin layer of the gray matter called as the indusium gracium. This is here in this diagram. This is a coronal section. In this we can see this one is corpus callosum and this one is septum pellucidum. Now we'll see in detail about each part of the corpus callosum. First we'll study about the rostrum. This is the rostrum part. It forms the floor of anterior horn of the lateral ventricle. Lateral ventricle, it is a cavity in the cerebrum, and this rostrum structure, it forms the floor of the anterior horn of the lateral ventricle. It connects the orbital surface of the frontal lobe, and it extends downward and backward to join the lamina terminalis. So this is a rostrum part. It forms the floor of the anterior horn of lateral ventricle. Now genu. This is the genu. It forms the anterior boundary of the anterior horn of the lateral ventricle. Some of the fibers of this genu, they sweep forward into the anterior part of the frontal lobe. They form the fork-like structure called as a forceps minor. So some of the fibers from genu, they sweeps forward in the frontal lobe, and these fibers are forming the forceps minor structure, forceps minor. Now trunk part, it is trunk, also called as a body of the corpus callosum. It is middle portion. It forms the roof of the central part of the lateral ventricle. It connects the frontal lobe and anterior part of the parietal lobe of two cerebral hemisphere. Now behind the thickest portion you can see here, this is the splenium. It forms the thick posterior part of the corpus callosum. It overhangs the thalamic pulvinar, pineal gland, and tectum part of the midbrain. It connects the posterior part of the parietal lobe, temporal lobe, and occipital lobe of the two hemispheres. And the fibers from the splenium, they sweeps backward in the occipital lobe. They form the structure forceps major. So fibers from the genu, they sweep forward in the frontal lobe towards the frontal bone. These are forming forceps minor structure. And for fibers from the splenium, which sweeps backward in the occipital lobe, this structure backward in the occipital lobe from the splenium part of the corpus callosum. This is forceps major. This is forceps minor. Here we can see these are the part of thalamus, thalamic. Then this is the body of the corpus callosum. This one. This is schematic representation. This is posterior horn of the lateral ventricle. This one. Now tapetum. The fibers from the splenium, those fibers from the splenium and trunk which are not intersected by the fibers of corona radiata. The fibers of those fibers of splenium and the trunk which are not intersected by the fibers of corona radiata, these fibers are called as a tapetum. This tapetum, it here you can see it forms the roof and the lateral wall of the posterior horn of the lateral ventricle. So this structure they are going to form the boundaries, or they are going to come in relation with the different parts of the lateral ventricle. We'll see in detail in lateral ventricle. Yes. Now remember, tapetum are those fibers from the splenium and trunk of the corpus callosum which are not intersected by the corona radiata, and it forms the roof and lateral wall of posterior horn of the lateral ventricle. Now, function of the corpus callosum, as we know, it connects the identical areas of two cerebral hemispheres. So it is responsible for interhemispheric transfer of information, which is essential for bilateral responses and the learning process. Now, applied related to the corpus callosum, there is a condition called agenesis of corpus callosum. It is a rare congenital anomaly or disorder. There is a partial or complete absence of the corpus callosum. Usually it occurs between 3rd to 12th week of the gestational life. Here you can see this is a normal. You can see here the corpus callosum, but here there is a agenesis of the corpus callosum. Now, split brain. This is seen in the, it is unique group of patient, the split brain patient. They had commissurotomy, where the corpus callosum is cut or it's severed so that the two hemispheres they are separated and don't communicate with each other. It is usually done in severe cases of epilepsy or epileptic fits, in which the patient which do not respond to the anti-epileptic drugs, and in severe cases only, in such severe cases only, the corpus callosum, callosotomy or commissurotomy is done. Here this condition is called split brain. Now, another example of commissural type of fibers, there is anterior commissure. This anterior commissure is a rounded commissure. It lies behind the lamina terminalis and it runs transversely in front of the anterior column of the fornix. Anterior column of the fornix. There are two types of, it shows two parts, anterior paleocortical fibers and posterior neocortical. Posterior neocortical, these fibers, they interconnect the lower and anterior parts of the temporal lobe, and anterior paleocortical, it connects the olfactory region of the two hemispheres. So hippocampal commissure, it interconnects the crura of the fornix and the hippocampal commissure. Here we can see this, here is the anterior commissure. This is the fornix part. So it interconnect the crura of the fornix and hippocampal commissure. Now posterior commissure, it is a bundle of fiber which cross the midline, and they cross the midline through the inferior lamina of the stalk of pineal gland, and it said to be connect the superior colliculus, pretectal and interstitial nuclei of the two cerebral hemisphere. Posterior commissure, it crosses the midline. These are bundle of fiber which cross the midline through the superior lamina of the stalk of pineal gland, and it connects the habenular nuclei of the two cerebral hemispheres. So we'll revise again in short. So we have seen this white matter of cerebrum. Each cerebral hemisphere consists of outer gray matter, inner white matter. This white matter consists of axons of the neuron. It is made up of axons of the neuron or nerve fibers. And in the white matter, there are some masses, collection of masses of gray matter. These are nothing but, these are located in the central core of the cerebral hemisphere. These are nothing but the basal ganglia. And in each cerebral hemisphere, there is a cavity inside it called as a lateral ventricle. So cerebrum consists of pair of lateral ventricles. This white matter, it consists of three types of fibers: association fiber, commissural fibers, and projection fiber. Projection fiber in detail we'll see later on in the next lectures. Association fiber, it interconnect the different region lying within the same hemisphere. It may connect the distant gyri or adjacent gyri within the same cerebral hemisphere. So depending upon this, there are of two types, short and long fibers. Commissural fiber, they connect the identical areas of both or two cerebral hemisphere. Projection fiber, they connect the cortex with the subcortical areas, connect the cortex with thalamus or brainstem or the spinal cord, and it contains ascending and descending fibers. Short association fibers, they connect the adjacent gyri in same hemisphere. And long association fiber, they connect the distant gyri in the same hemisphere. Example of long association fiber is superior longitudinal fasciculus. The superior longitudinal fasciculus, it connects the frontal, occipital, and the temporal lobe, and it lies just above the insula. Arcuate fasciculus, it connects the frontal lobe with the temporal lobe. It connects the two important areas of the speech, Broca's area and the Wernicke's area, and it is important for the language function. So arcuate fasciculus, it connects to these two important speech areas. Here we can see this is Broca's area and this is the Wernicke's area. Inferior longitudinal fasciculus, it connects the occipital lobe with the temporal lobe, and it is related with the visual recognition. It connects the visual areas with the temporal lobe, and it has contribution in visual recognition. Uncinate fasciculus, it is U-shaped. This is a U-shaped fasciculus. It winds or curve around the stem of the lateral sulcus, and it connects the anterior and inferior part of the frontal lobe with the temporal lobe. It connects basically the parts of the limbic system. So here we can see different types of association fiber. These are short association fiber which are going to connect the adjacent gyri, and this is long association fiber which is going to connect the distant gyri in the same hemisphere. This is cingulum. This is superior longitudinal fasciculus. This is uncinate fasciculus. This is inferior longitudinal fasciculus. These are example of the long association fiber. Cingulum, it begins in the paraterminal gyrus and it runs in the cingulate gyrus. Then it curves inferiorly, turns inferior to run into the parahippocampal gyrus, and it is going to connect the parts of the limbic system. Finally, terminates in the uncus. Commissural fibers, there are basically this corpus callosum, anterior commissure, posterior commissure, havenular commissure, and hippocampal commissure. These are the example of commissural type of fibers. It connects the identical areas of the two cerebral hemisphere. Corpus callosum we are going to study in detail. This corpus callosum is the largest commissure of the brain. It connects the homologous area of the two cerebral hemisphere. Its length is 10 centimeter and it contains almost 300 million fiber. It shows four parts. Anterior to posteriorly, there is antemost is rostrum, then this is genu, then this is trunk or body, and posteriormost thickest part is the splenium. Anterior end of the corpus callosum, it lies 4 cm behind the frontal pole, and posterior end, it lies 6 cm in front of the occipital pole, and it lies in the floor of the median longitudinal. This corpus callosum lies in the floor of median longitudinal fissure. Its inferior surface is attached to fornix. It is attached to fornix by septum pellucidum, and its superior surface is covered with the thin layer of gray matter called as the indicium glycium. Then parts of the corpus callosum, it shows basically 4 parts. This rostrum, it forms floor of the anterior horn of lateral ventricle. It connects the orbital surfaces of the frontal lobe. They extend downward and backward, to join the lamina terminalis. Genu, it forms the anterior boundary of anterior horn of lateral ventricle. Some of the fibers from genu, they sweep forward into the frontal lobe. These are forming the fork-like structure called as the forceps minor. Trunk, it is middle portion of corpus callosum. It forms the roof of the central part of lateral ventricle. It connects the frontal lobe and anterior part of the parietal lobe of 2 cerebral hemisphere. Splenium, it is thickest portion which lies posteriorly, and it overhangs the thalamic pulvinar, pineal gland, and tectum part of the midbrain. It connects the posterior part of parietal lobe, temporal lobe, and occipital lobe of the 2 hemisphere. The fibers from the splenium, some of the fibers, they sweep backward in the occipital lobe. They form the structure forceps major. So this is forceps minor, this is forceps major. This is posterior horn of lateral ventricle, and this red dots you can see, this is corona radiata. This one, this is anterior horn of the lateral ventricle. This is body of corpus callosum. Tapetum are those fibers from the trunk and splenium of the corpus callosum which are not intersected by this corona radiata. These fibers are called tapetum. So it forms the roof and lateral wall of posterior horn of the lateral ventricle. So corpus callosum, it is responsible for the interhemispheric transfer of information, which is essential for the bilateral responses and the learning process. Agenesis of corpus callosum, it is a rare congenital anomaly or disorder in which there is a partial or complete absence of corpus callosum. Usually occurs between 3rd to 12th week of the gestational life. So here we can appreciate on the CT, MRI, or the PET scan. Split brain. So this is in this condition, the patient who had the commissurotomy or the callosomotomy, it is here a corpus callosum, it is cut or severed so that the 2 hemispheres are separated from each other. They don't communicate with each other. It is usually done in severe cases of epilepsy in which the patient do not respond to the medication. This anterior commissure, it is a rounded commissure. Here will be the anterior commissure. This one. So it is a rounded commissure which lies behind the lamina terminalis, and it runs transversely in front of the anterior column of the fornix. It consists of 2 types of fibers, anterior paleocortical and posterior neocortical. Posterior neocortical, they interconnect the lower and anterior parts of temporal lobe, and anterior paleocortical connect the olfactory region of the 2 hemispheres. Hippocampal commissure interconnect the crura of the fornix and hippocampal commissure. Costicommissure, it is a slender bundle of fiber which crosses the midline through the inferior lamina of stalk of the midline. It connects the superior colliculus, pretectal and interstitial nuclei of the two sides. Heminular commissure, it crosses the midline through the superior lamina of the stalk of pineal gland and it connects the heminular nuclei of the two sides. Thank you.